Welcome. I'm Chief Sean Schwartfeger of the Wheeling Police Department. We are here today to cover and provide detail involving a 5-year investigation that culminated in a guilty plea earlier this week of 2 counts of first-degree murder. I want to introduce those that may be at the podium during this presser. First, Sergeant Rob Seyfried, to my left, Sergeant Ryan Farrell, both of the Wheeling Police Department, Chief Assistant Prosecutor of Ohio County, Sean Turak, and Sergeant Wayne Long of the Raleigh County Sheriff's Department in Southern West Virginia. In June of 2021, several of us before you today held a very similar press event seeking information on a somewhat stagnant homicide investigation. The general public rose to that challenge, and within about a month, the first arrest was made in this case, and a snowball effect then began. During the past 5 years, I have been forever impressed by the teamwork, the dedication, the diligence, perseverance, and skill demonstrated by these folks and many others. As a chief of police responsible for the safety of a community, I have great peace of mind knowing that I have the brightest and most driven team hard at work to successfully resolve cases like this. In my 32-year law enforcement career, this is one, if not the, most singular, brutal, and savage homicide cases that I've come to know. And I know we have members of the decedent's families here today, and we appreciate them working with us throughout this 5-year process. Before I turn it over to the experts to walk you through the course of events, I wanted to personally thank several individuals and organizations that provided valuable assistance during this investigation. The Raleigh County Sheriff's Department in West Virginia and Sergeant Wayne Long, the West Virginia State Police and their crime lab, the West Virginia Canine and Recovery Team, Marshall University, the Smithsonian Institution, specifically their anthropology department, and again, you, the general public, for assisting us. I'll now turn it over to Chief Assistant Prosecutor, Ms. Sean Turak. Thank you, Sean.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I want to especially thank the members of Lauren Jenkins and Trevor Vosson's family that are here today. And I want to thank them for their patience. It's been a long 5 years, and they have been with us every step of the way. We were quite surprised by the chain of events that happened on Monday, September 18, 2023, this week. We were anticipating a 2 to 3 week jury trial in which the state of West Virginia was going to call 26 witnesses, 8 of whom were experts in various fields that we'll talk about today. I know the family was just as shocked as myself and Gail Kale, my partner in this case, were when Gerald Jako admitted his guilt in first-degree murder to the death and killing of Trevor Vosson and Lauren Jenkins. There are a lot of questions that the public has come forward with over the last 5 years, that the family members have come forward in the last 5 years. We felt we owed it to them, to the public, to tell the story of what would have been told had this case gone to a trial. And let me just say this, had it gone to a trial, I have no doubt that Mr. Jako would have been convicted of all counts. So with that, I will tell you at the end of this, all questions will be taken. We will answer anything, but we are going to start with a PowerPoint presentation, and the various members of this incredible law enforcement team will be talking through each slide as we go through what happened here. So we'll start with a timeline. Sergeant Seyfried of the City of Wheeling Police Department began working a missing persons investigation. Family members of Trevor Vosson and Lauren Jenkins reported their last being seen on July 31, 2018. From the entire case, we know that Gerald Jako murdered Trevor Vosson first and Lauren Jenkins between August 1 and August 2, 2018. The family members of Trevor and Lauren reported them missing on August 3rd, 2018. What we know from the investigation, as you will see, was on the day that they were reported missing to the City of Wheeling Police Department, Gerald Jako was driving his Jeep down I-77 into Beckley with the dismembered body parts in that Jeep. On August 4, he set the remains on fire off a road called Sullivan Road in Beckley, West Virginia. Those remains were not discovered for 11 days. On August 15, 2018, Jeffrey Browning, who would have testified, he was in the area in Beckley looking for firewood to heat his home for the upcoming winter, stumbled across the remains off of Sullivan Road. The Raleigh County Sheriff's Department responded. Sergeant Wayne Long was the lead detective in that investigation down in Raleigh County, West Virginia. I'm going to jump ahead for a moment. As the members of the press know, 2 years ago, that summer, we held a press conference seeking information on what appeared to be a stagnant investigation. We knew a lot. We needed to carry that ball across the finish line. And to do that, we had this press conference, which resulted in the arrest of Mr. Brendan. And that's how I'm going to identify this, only that witness. Mr. Brendan was arrested in July of 2021, a month after the press conference. From that arrest, ultimately, we were able to learn his role in this, which was he was essentially forced to assist Mr. Jako in the dismemberment of the bodies after he had killed Trevor and Lauren on August 1 and 2, 2018. From that debriefing of Mr. Brendan, we were able to then proceed to the grand jury in September of 2021. Dana Bowman and Gerald Wayne Jako were charged at that time jointly with 3 counts of murder and two counts of concealment of a deceased human body. As you know, on September 18, Monday of this week, Mr. Jako entered guilty pleas to first-degree murder, 2 counts. What you don't know is that last April, Dana Bowman admitted her guilt to 2 counts of concealment of a deceased human body. That was not a televised hearing. That was not a hearing that the press was made aware of. With her guilty plea, the state of West Virginia then was able to use her and would have called her, actually she was our 3rd witness in this trial. She witnessed Mr. Jako specifically shoot and kill Trevor Vossen, and it was in her house, and the next day she woke up, Mr. Jako had informed her that he was done. Lauren Jenkins was dead. Both bodies were in her basement. She would have testified in this trial. As you know, sentencing has not been determined, and at this point I'm going to start with the slideshow. This is our beautiful Lauren Jenkins. She was 28 years old. Her birthday, I believe, was January 18, 1990. Her boyfriend, Trevor Vossen, his birthday, I believe, is October 1, 1991. Trevor and Lauren were boyfriend-girlfriend. They would be 32 and 31 years old today. And as many know, Lauren Jenkins was 5 months pregnant when Gerald Jako murdered her. I'm going to turn it over now to Sergeant Long. Ask you to speak here.
What you'll see here is a crime scene located in the 2000 block of Sullivan Road in Raleigh County, West Virginia. When Mr. Browning came upon the burn pile, he had positioned his vehicle in the middle of this opening, which is a small clearing in a wooded area, as I stated, off Sullivan Road. When he backed his vehicle up and got out to get firewood is when he stumbled across a numerous amount of remains. After he contacted law enforcement, several detectives, along with several members of the Raleigh County Sheriff's Office, responded on scene. We worked that crime scene for 2 days. We spread out into a line search and began searching. As Mr. Rack stated, it was 11 days from the time the bodies were initially placed there. Due to that, there was a large amount of animal activity that scattered those bones approximately 75 yards across that clearing. We worked this crime scene for between 8.5 and 9 hours between the 2 days. Deputies set on scene overnight on the 15th of August, 2018, at which time we resumed in August 16th of 2018. As you can see here, there was multiple remains found. There was mold growing under some of the bones, just due to the fact where they had been set out there for so long. The bones, this is, I think, a bone that was in the burn pile. Numerous amount of the bones located there, you could see that had been cut. They had straight edges on them where they had been dismembered. This is glasses that you can refer back to a previous picture later, the one you saw earlier, as Trevor Vossen was wearing. Those were located in the burn pile on Sullivan Road. This is multiple tools that were found in that fire pit. I think, if I can recall correctly, there were six Sawzall blades located in there. Some tin snips, also some rings from curtains or shower rings, I'm not sure. In the back of that photograph, you see a metal gas can. That gas can is a accelerant that we located within the soil that was collected on scene, as well as later in this you'll see the vehicle that was located. There was heavy distillate found on the bumper swipe of the vehicle that you'll later see in this slide. I'm going to turn the shell casings over to Mr. Seyfried.
So these were recovered down in Beckley off Sullivan Road. When we debriefed Dana Bowman, she would have testified that she witnessed 3 shots being fired in her residence. One striking Mr. Vossen, the other one striking Ms. Jenkins. And then she would also have testified that after she had gone to bed that night, she fully expected not to wake up in the morning because of the events that she just witnessed. And the 4th shell casing would have been the one that ultimately killed Lauren. We processed those shell casings and submitted them to the ATF, their NIBIN division. So that was in an attempt to see if that firearm had been used in any previous crimes. We did not get any leads from that. However, they are still in NIBIN, so in the future, if that gun were to be used in any crimes, a lead would be generated that that was, in fact, the murder weapon used in this case. And that is ultimately one of the things that we never did recover during this investigation was the murder weapon. We also never recovered Trevor Vossen's vehicle. Now, Dana would have testified that after the killings, they transported Trevor's vehicle on Interstate 470 West to County Road 214 and abandoned it in the park and ride just off of the highway. After learning this information several years after the fact, we attempted to locate that vehicle, one by going there and checking with all the tow yards in Belmont County, as well as every law enforcement agency in Belmont County, and no one had any record of that vehicle by VIN or by plate. I'll let you take that.
This is just numerous items that was collected out of the burn pit on August 16th, 2018. They were separated into somewhat of categories so that they could be placed in evidence or turned over to the medical examiner. Number 6 was a bag, a convenience store small bag, a black bag that was collected on scene that was probably, I would say, probably 20 yards from the actual burn pit, whether it blew out or came out of the vehicle and blown out of the fire prior to, I'm not sure. We did send that off to the lab along with, I think, 14 other items for fingerprint analysis for latent prints. This bag had 2 prints on that. It had a print that was Trevor Vossen's, Gerald Wayne Jako Jr.'s, and his girlfriend at that time also had her fingerprint on there as well. You want to talk about that?
Let me just say this. On the fingerprint itself, that report was generated by the West Virginia State Police Crime Lab August 30, 2018. At that point, Mr. Jako had already been determined to be a person of interest. During the investigation early on, Raleigh County detectives came up to Wheeling. They met with Sarah Lynn Vossen, the mother of Trevor. What she had found in Lauren's belongings that were left behind, Trevor and Lauren stayed together at Miss Vossen's home in a separate apartment. What she found was a list of telephone numbers. And those telephone numbers, Sergeant Long from the Raleigh County Sheriff's Department went through each and every phone number. The only number that came back that had any significance was one number that belonged to Jako. It was also the only person who had ties to both Wheeling and Raleigh County. So while they were up here on they came here August 22nd through the 24th in 2018, Gerald Wayne Jako was arrested on August 23, 2018. At that point, detectives found his car, and I'm going to turn it over to Seyfried.
Yeah, so Jako was arrested in Belmont County on an outstanding warrant out of Wyoming County, where he was extradited back for those crimes. We followed up on where he was arrested in Belmont County, and we spoke to the resident where he was staying with over in Belmont County, and we were able to, actually the Raleigh County deputies who came up with us were able to locate Jako's vehicle. You can see in that photo, parked just around the corner from that residence. And in the back, I don't know if you can see from that photograph, but there's a clear stain mark of what appeared to be liquid, which ended up being heavy petroleum distillate, an accelerant on the bumper, as well as clear smell of burning, almost like a campfire that was still present at the time. That vehicle was later towed from Bel Air and packaged, as you can see here, so that it could be processed down in Raleigh County. A deputy from Raleigh County came all the way up from Beckley area and followed the tow truck from Bel Air, Ohio, down to Raleigh County. And I'll let Detective Long speak on that.
On August 24th, a search warrant was obtained for this vehicle and executed that same day. On that day, prior to executing that search warrant, we ran a K9 cadaver dog that detects human remains. That K9 did indicate that human remains was located in the rear hatch of that vehicle. He gave an indication right at the rear of the vehicle. Later, as I stated on that day, we did execute that search warrant, took several swabs out of that vehicle, and we processed that vehicle for approximately 5 hours on that date. This is in Raleigh County, West Virginia. This is Roosevelt Street. This is Gerald Wayne Jako's residence. Search warrant was executed on this residence for multiple belongings that could have been used during the crime. You'll see in that chair there's a Sawzall located. We collected that Sawzall in the garage of the residence on Roosevelt Street, which was, again, the residence of Gerald Jako. After collecting the saw, we went back to the Raleigh County Sheriff's Office, and I did a presumptive blood test on that saw. It did have indication of blood, at which time I then sent it to West Virginia State Police Crime Lab, and it did show that it had human DNA on it, and I'll turn that over because it was later sent off to Marshall University.
What I'll say about this particular evidence, listening to phone calls between Mr. Jako and his father, we learned that, and I believe it was Sergeant Long learned first, that his father had taken that saw and wiped it down. What Sergeant Long didn't tell you was he took the saw apart. He did a presumptive test for blood on the interior of the saw. That's where he found the blood. And with regard to the vehicle itself, there was no usable or no DNA that could be obtained from Trevor or Lauren directly. So what happened was we were able to take swabs from the parents and do what's called parentage DNA testing. So from the West Virginia State Police Crime Lab, we went from biological materials to the DNA expert who generated all the DNA profiles and then submitted it to Marshall University Forensic Science Center. And that expert, Laura Kuiper, would have testified that both the swab from the rear of Mr. Jako's vehicle, as well as the swab taken from the interior of that reciprocating saw, contained the DNA of the offspring of Dolores and Rodney Jenkins. So that testing was incredible, given the extensive efforts that were used to clean up not only Ms. Bowman's house, which we'll get to in a moment, but the vehicle itself. At the time, Mr. Jako's girlfriend, Samantha England, told us that she was forced to clean up that car after the remains were set on fire on August 4, 2018. I'm going to turn this over to Sergeant Seyfried.
This is was an abandoned residence over on South Huron Street on Wheeling Island. During the investigation, we got tips from the general public, and one of those tips came from a neighbor of that residence who would have testified that she observed Gerald Jako burning something behind that residence. So when I followed up on that tip, I went to the alley, and as you can see here, it's hard to see from that photo, but there is a pile of obviously burned material on that concrete pad. I obtained a search warrant for that property, and then upon searching that burn pile, I located a small piece of bone. That bone was submitted to the medical examiner's office and ultimately to the Smithsonian Institute of Anthropology with the rest of the remains that were discovered in Raleigh County. And Dr. Owsley of the Smithsonian would have testified that that small fragment of bone there came or belonged to Trevor Vossen. Also in that burn pile was located a blue moving type blanket, and that same type of blanket was also discovered in the burn pile down in Raleigh County. And also in Dana's testimony, she would have testified that a blue moving type blanket was used to move the bodies in her house from the kitchen to the basement. This is the front of Dana Bowman's residence. On the 31st of July, 2018, of August, 2018, I obtained a search warrant for that residence. Myself and several other detectives went in there and processed the scene. When you walked in, you would not have imagined that a murder occurred in that house because of the lengths that were taken to clean up that crime scene. However, it was apparent that something had occurred to cover up something in that occurred in that kitchen, because you can see there the two different paint colors. So that tells me that it was hastily painted. And Dana Bowman would have testified that part of the cleaning up of the crime scene was not only to scrub the kitchen with bleach, she also used acid, which we recovered a bottle of muriatic acid in the basement of that residence. She replaced the floorboards in the kitchen, and she also spackled and patched holes in the wall from the bullets and painted the walls. This is a photograph of the kitchen floor in Dana's residence. Now, when I came in with that search warrant, I also contacted a search and rescue team out of Tyler County, West Virginia. They brought cadaver dogs with them, and the cadaver dog indicated on that specific spot in Dana's kitchen. I sprayed those cabinets with luminol in an attempt to search for blood evidence. I did get a reaction on the lower part of the cabinets as well as the back of the cabinet doors. Those were all the flooring that you see is missing, and the cabinet doors were all collected and swabbed and submitted down to the West Virginia State Police Crime Lab. On the floor next to the kitchen cabinet, in between where that pipe going down to the basement is, there was a spot that I swabbed and did a presumptive blood test, which was positive for blood. And Dana Bowman would have testified that she witnessed Trevor get shot and fall right there in that approximate spot on the kitchen floor. Yes, so she also would have testified that after he was shot, then he shot Lauren She went to the front of her house to compose herself, and when she came back to the kitchen, she saw Mr. Jako stabbing Trevor in the neck with a kitchen knife, telling him to die like a man. He then transported Trevor's body down to the basement and eventually brought Lulu, or Lauren, down to the basement as well. In part of her cleanup efforts, she burnt some of the flooring that she removed from the kitchen and replaced, as well as clothing and other items that were used to clean up. And she took some of those floorboards and threw them over the hill in front of her house into a small ravine, which were later recovered by myself and Sergeant Farrell. That was several years after the incident. We did attempt to process those, but negative results for any biological material or blood evidence. I'll let you talk about it.
Sure. What you're going to see here is a video clip of Gerald Jako coming back August 3rd, August 4th. I can't recall the exact time. It went over into midnight when he was driving back that night. This is him going through the toll booth between Charleston and Beckley. Next clip here is going to be a different angle, obviously. You can see there's a sunroof, a cloth top that was on this Jeep Liberty that you can see is open. If you pay close attention as it pulls forward, you can see what appears to be trash bags or some sort in that vehicle.
The car that you see in this clip now we believe, is a car driven by Holly Mills. Holly Mills is married to Mr. Jako's best friend since he was a teenager. Ms. Mills would testify, she lives in the southern part of the state. She would testify that on August 2, the day before you see these video clips, she started receiving frantic messages from Samantha England, Jako's girlfriend, saying that she had to get to Wheeling. Jako had summoned Samantha England, his then girlfriend, to come to Wheeling to help him clean up a mess. Holly Mills on August 3rd drove Samantha England up to Wheeling. They went to Dana Bowman's residence, at which time Mr. Jako was then seen loading up his personal belongings into Ms. Mills's vehicle. She was then asked to follow him from Wheeling all the way back down to Beckley. At this time, as you can tell from the clip we just showed you, we believe that the car was full of the remains of the dismembered bodies of Trevor and Lauren. What we found to be incredibly cold on the part of Mr. Jako was that on his way out of town on August 3, 2018, before he got too far, he stopped for dinner at the St. Clairsville Mall at the Steak and Shake. And not only did he stop for dinner, he went inside with his car stinking and smelling of what was in it. And he sat down and he had a meal with Miss Mills and Samantha, his girlfriend, while his car sat in that parking lot next to whoever else would have known to be, who could have smelled it. That's the kind of person that we were facing here. It was a very calculating, cold-blooded, not moved by emotion, cold-hearted killer. And I just want to say that's the end of our slideshow. We'll answer any questions you have. We have way more that we could tell you, but I'm very proud to have been the lead prosecutor on this case and to work with these fine men. And I'm very honored to have served the Jenkins and the Vossen family. So we'll take any questions that you have.
Awakening of some sort to which he pleaded guilty to these murders?
One thing we didn't address, Jamie, is the motive for this. And we were hampered a little bit by a court ruling that said we couldn't tell the jury that he was arrested on July 27, 2018. But the motive in this case was revenge. And by revenge, what I mean is, according to Mr. Jako, and we've never been able to verify this, and I will not sully Trevor and Lauren by suggesting that this is true. Mr. Jako believes that when he was incarcerated, Trevor and Lauren stole his stuff. That was the motive for the murder. It's never been confirmed, and so I am hesitant to say that that happened. However, he believed that to be the case. As to why he pled, I think the only thing that I would speculate is that he might, in his own mind, believe he has a shot to breathe free air one day. I don't expect, or I certainly hope, that the court will order sentencing to run consecutive to his first-degree robbery conviction. That happened after, the robbery happened after the murders, but the trial for the robbery happened first. He got a 100-year sentence on that. If I believe he believes he might have a chance to one day be non-incarcerated, I hope that never happens, and I don't think it will.
Case, but he pled guilty to 2 murders. Was that just part of the plea deal, or how did that?
That was the plea deal. West Virginia Code permits a separate offense to be charged for an unborn fetus. That formed the third basis of murder. Now, earlier in the press conference, I mentioned that Dana Bowman pled guilty to 2 counts of concealment of a deceased human body. There was no evidence of fetal remains at the Sullivan County burn site where the remains were found. What we learned in dealing with Dr. Owsley, the anthropologist from the Smithsonian, is fetal remains may have likely been consumed by the fire, whereas full adult remains would not have. So he was charged with that third count. We acknowledged our proof on the concealment we didn't even charge that because we didn't have the proof. I don't believe it was a weak case. We had video evidence of Lauren from the Kroger in a separate incident that didn't involve Lauren. She just happened to be on video that showed her approximately 2 weeks before she was murdered, clearly pregnant. We had medical records that Lauren was filling out. She had an August 15, 2018 doctor's appointment the day that the remains were discovered. That was on the calendar. At her home. Her mother brought me the calendar, and it has a little note in Lauren's handwriting that she had a doctor's appointment. We fully believe that we could get a conviction for murder of that unborn child. But that was one count that we dismissed as a result of the 2 life sentences he'll be receiving for the 2 counts of murder.
Obviously, a ton of moving parts, a ton of counties.
Yes.
When you look at kind of what you guys were going to present, you said you expected a 1 to 2 week trial. What was kind of the plan of attack for you guys as you went into this? Obviously, you presented all this, but what was the game plan for you?
The game plan was to begin with Mrs. Jenkins and then Mrs. Vossen. Let them testify as to the events surrounding their missing persons report, as well as establish things like Lauren's handwriting to get her medical records in, Lauren being on the video. As soon as they were able to testify, they could sit down as no longer as a witness in this case, but as a grieving mother and watch the trial unfold. From that point, we wanted to get them in and out so they could watch it. Our very third witness was Dana Bowman, and we felt if Dana Bowman testified consistent with everything she told us during the investigation, and I believe she would have, that we would have the murder proven, and then it was a matter of corroboration of all of the things that she would say. The last witness in this case was going to be Mr. Brendan. He was the one who was called to the scene afterwards by Dana Bowman. He went there believing he was giving them drugs. He walked into a house of horrors, and at that point he knew that if he didn't help Mr. Jako finish dismembering those bodies, he believed, probably very accurately so, that he was going to be the next victim. So he was our last witness, and everybody in between was designed to prove it. DNA experts, anthropology experts, the dental examiner. We had to prove whose remains were found. So we had a dental expert who now is retired, living in Wilmington, North Carolina, who was traveling to Wheeling to testify that he examined the radiographs from the autopsies, and he could testify comparing those to dental records of Trevor and Lauren. Those are who they were. The anthropologist from the Smithsonian, those 2 experts, I wish you guys could have seen them. They were incredible. They both worked on mass disaster recovery. Dr. Owsley did the 9/11 Pentagon victims. and identified all the bones that went to each body. Dr. Carson, the dentist, did the Flight 93 victims. I mean, they have extensive experience in these fields. They would testify as to all of the bones that were recovered that belonged to Trevor, all of the bones that were recovered that belonged to Lauren. He would be able to distinguish those. And Sergeant Seyfried, when he found that bone on Wheeling Island, Dr. Owsley could say, that is Trevor Vossen's bone. So the DNA experts would testify as to what, of all the evidence that was there, what we got one fingerprint from the crime scene and 2 areas of DNA. And the rest was, corroboration. So.
You guys, obviously, 5-year case, expecting it to go to trial, and it doesn't even make it through jury selection. What was kind of the reaction of you all as this unfolded Monday morning?
Well, plea agreements obviously are an agreement between everybody involved. I thought it was a good thing, mostly for the family. They can start grieving and not have to go through any more waiting, and they can start that grieving process. And then it's an absolute resolution to it. There's no going back from it. There's no appeals. So it is what it is. He's going to have 2 life sentences.
Wayne, you want to address that, your perspective?
Yeah, I'll just kind of hit on the appeals thing. When the plea agreement's going to allow it, it's going to be extremely hard for him to have any type of appeals. I just think makes it extremely solid as far as a result of that plea deal.
What I'll tack on, Jamie, is that we sat down with the families beforehand, and we, as a team, and when I say team, I mean law enforcement and the families, we agreed we would make a plea offer. No one ever expected Mr. Jako to take it. We fully expected this to be the 2.5-week Gerald Wayne Jako show. That's what we thought, and we thought we were going to give it to him, and we were going to give it to him good. No one thought he was going to take it. I think the family has mixed reactions. Some family members are pleased, some are not, and I understand that. However, that offer was made with the blessing of everybody. It does represent, as both of these gentlemen have said, it represents finality, it represents certainty, it represents closure. From that perspective, that's a good thing. Those are all very good things. I know a lot of people wanted to know what was going to happen in that trial, but at the end of the day, getting 12 people to get in line and always say march in step with one another through the guilty door, I know we would have done it. It just takes a while. And then the appeals process starts. And after the appeals process, you have the habeas process. So there's finality, and that's always a good thing.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you
you
all
all
for
for
coming.
coming.